Welcome back to our video series where our live panel of therapists answer the questions you've always wanted to ask a therapist. If you're watching for the first time, be sure to check out our previous videos. Again, we have Courtney, Heather, Jackie, Sean, Tammy, Lauren, and myself, I am Stephanie. Our first question for today is, how can you take care of so many people and still have time for yourselves?
The biggest thing is sticking to a work-life balance and sticking to that boundary. So for me, that means I am only working during my work hours. I don't typically check email or text messages outside of those hours, and that's just so that I can take care of myself as well. Self-care is incredibly important. We talk about that with our clients, but we also implement it. So I'm taking care of myself, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, just so that I can stay grounded and refreshed.
I think I actually have developed a pretty good ability to shut off work when I go home, probably as a result of having worked in the field for over 20 years. I think initially I carried around a lot of the emotions that I felt in session or with people. And as I've honed in on my therapy skills, I guess, I don't know what quite to call it, but you learn to let go of what happens at work, literally at work, because if you carry it around, I mean, most people come in for therapy to talk about really painful, sad, depressing, anxious things, and you can't emotionally carry that into your personal space. And the other thing is too to practice what we preach, right? Which is, I feel like every day I work, I talk at least one to probably a dozen times about self care for other people, and what that looks like for them. And so on my days off, I try really hard to practice what I preach, but just like clients, sometimes I fail miserably at that, and start over tomorrow.
I will say that exercise is kind of non-negotiable for me. It's probably my number one go-to to burn off some of my um, stuff, and it's part of my therapy. So figuring out how to make space for that almost daily, even if it's just like a half hour of some sort of movement. And then I have a really good support system with my coworkers, my work family, my own family, my friends outside of work. I think those are all really important. And I have my own therapist.
I think that I find like small bits of things that I enjoy, like a cup of coffee or, downtown Oswego is so fun to just pop into a store and check something out. So I like that, like a 5 minute, 10 minute, like just quick, thing that makes me feel um good again, and like back into like my realm so I can go home and I can do now my home stuff. Like I compartmentalize those things.
Think similarly, like we talk about practicing what you preach, like Heather mentioned. We talk a lot about boundaries and establishing healthy boundaries with our clients in their own lives, and then just being able to maintain that in our lives so that we can be that empathetic person and be there for them, support them, provide resources during session, and then walk away and try to turn your brain off from that session. And sometimes for me, I enjoy some form of positive movement as well, if I'm able to just even go for a short walk to kind of process all the things that are in my mind. That really helps. Or sometimes even like Tammy mentioned, going to a store and just new sight, sounds, sensory things that trigger my brain to think of different things are helpful to kind of switch gears. But that switching of gears is really critical so that you can tune into your own family or your own world at home, so that you can have that time to kind of decompress and be your best self for your clients too, but also kind of establish, like, for me to be my best self in session, I have to recharge, refresh, and feel like I'm me when I'm not in session.
I think also we talk frequently about living a values-based life, and so I think that translates not only to our clients, but also we have to practice what we preach as well. And so when you consider the balance of that, obviously we all value work and connection with humanity, and so I think that among all the other things that we value, I think it's kind of constant. We have to make a decision of what we how we're going to keep that balance, right?
Every morning as I drink my cup of coffee, I'll make a list and a note in my phone about like 3 or 4 self-care things I want to hit in that day. And if I don't get them all, it's fine, but it's just an intention. So even if it's just like a cup of tea in the afternoon, like I'm having right now, or a run, or reading a book with my son, or sometimes I'll just put on the list like hug my husband, hug my kids, just so like I'm hitting something that's important to me for that day. Call my mom.
What are some subtle toxic traits a person should be on the lookout for when they start dating someone?
I think criticism is probably a important thing. If someone is subtly or overtly criticizing you for some piece of who you are or your appearance. And I think another important thing is how do you feel in the relationship? If you don't feel good about yourself in the relationship, that's probably a pretty big red flag.
If you feel pressured, maybe early on, or the timing of how things are moving forward, if someone is not respecting what you're saying or doesn't seem to be listening to your feedback, that may be a sign that that person may not be the best fit for you. I would assume most people like to put their best foot forward when meeting new people. So if someone is disrespecting you or wanting you to move along much more quickly than you would like to, that may be a sign that they're not good for you.
Back to the boundaries thing too, is I was thinking, I don't know how you guys feel about this, but almost over involved in others, like your spouse's social media or text messages, or that lack of trust and lack of or maybe again that control of like what's going on.
Well, there should not be necessarily secrecy in a relationship.
Right.
There's got to be some level of trust where you're not monitoring or checking that's sort of that control, jealousy, and security piece that is usually pretty insidious, I think, in relationships, whether you're a teenager or an adult.
Yeah, I think kind of similar to what you guys have touched on is like the sense of control. Are they controlling of you? Are they flexible with you and your time and your space and allowing you to be yourself? Which is really important in a relationship, and an ideal setting. A really attached person would be comfortable with themselves and you having your own interests, hobbies, friends, close relationships. So I think that control piece and how attached they're really getting to you and making you feel is a significant thing to be mindful of in the beginning.
Identifying the fact that we are individuals first before we are members of a couple is significant. And so when I say that, I mean giving people the opportunity to do what suits them in the sense of their free time, right? So if that's spending time with their friends separate from their partner, or whether that's different hobbies or whatnot, we still need to be able to have our own inner worlds and outer worlds separate from our partners.
The different cultural backgrounds, how relationships have changed, like polyamory. There are, all sorts of mixed relationships nowadays. Maybe just bringing it back to how do you feel in the relationship, and does that feel good to you? Pay attention to your gut feelings and your own values. Does that relationship line up with those things, or is it feel like it's a complete mismatch and you're changing who you are to be in a relationship?
I like that. I think most people's gut instinct is usually right. Usually, like if it feels good, once you get through the what is that called in the beginning? That like infatuation, right? Like in the very, very beginning, your gut might not be so honest, but once you get through that honeymoon phase, your gut will usually tell you, like, if this is healthy, if this is good, if it's moving in the right place.
For our last question today, what if you are scared to say what is upsetting you or what you are really thinking? How can you feel comfortable saying exactly what you feel to a stranger?
I think in some way, it depends on the situation, but some people feel more comfortable telling it to a stranger than they would to their parents or their partner or their siblings or their friends. just because they know it's not going to go anywhere. The other piece of it, though, is that oftentimes when they finally disclose something, we might not be strangers when we get to that point where they share something that's the more private piece of whatever they're hiding.
If you're scared, yeah, give it time, because sometimes it does just take that time to realize that it's not going anywhere or trust that process. So sometimes it's just time.
Like we've mentioned a few different times about like the rapport between the client and the therapist being so critical. And if the client's ideally, the client should be um, learning that this space is a welcoming space where they're not feeling judged, where they're really feeling supported, valued, and through time, hopefully, like Tammy mentioned, not feel that that person is a stranger anymore, but is this safe. But still, I think the important piece, like kind of Courtney touched on as well, is an objective person, like where they're not in your personal life. You're not living life with them, but you are able to share maybe the most important, most secretive even things of yourself to this person because you have that trust and safety built up and established. And you can kind of find that as almost a unique outlet as opposed to a friend, family who is in your day-to-day life and is interacting with you. So it really is a very unique relationship.
And I was thinking that can be like part of the goals too. If someone is struggling with opening up, my guess is it wouldn't just be happening in the therapeutic setting. It would be happening, in multiple places in their life, and working on them feeling more comfortable in their own skin. Because I think feeling embarrassed or afraid to share something with a therapist or with a friend, we got to look at where that's coming from. And it might just be not feeling comfortable in the therapeutic setting yet.
There's this phrase that sticks out, which was repeated to me over and over through graduate school, and it's providing unconditional positive regard. And I think people come in with the expectation that we will judge them like they felt judged outside of that therapeutic setting. But that's not our goal. Like, that's not how we assist people and help people change in the way that they want to change. So I think we see people as human, right? We see people as similar to ourselves with flaws and issues that can always be worked on, and that's separate from judgment, right?
I think it also helps that we get to hear a lot of people's stories. And so oftentimes where like a parent will respond like, oh my goodness, I can't believe my kid has experienced this, or I can't believe they're going through this. You're like, yeah, we've heard it a few times now from different, clients around this age. So I think that also helps, in my opinion, with my being able to process it and normalize it and realize that like this is just a part of life that we're transitioning through, and this is a part of your story is unique in itself, but it's also something that we're familiar with.
My advice would be just to let your therapist know. Just share that piece of, I'm feeling scared to share something with you right now, or I'm feeling uncomfortable talking about this. Even that little piece of it can completely change the dynamic in session, because we want to be there to support you. So we don't want to push you too soon. We want to be there and support you in how you want to express yourself in your own time. So by sharing that small piece, it gives us more insight to your experience.
It's a bold risk that these people are taking. And I think that I admire them all so much for taking that risk and for trying to find a safe space to feel better. And I think all of us as therapists really respect that process and admire and have so much compassion for the patient as they open up. And again, yeah, we don't want to force them too quickly. And then when they do, we want to show them that unconditional positive regard, like Jackie said.
I also think there is a misconception that being open and vulnerable is easy for a lot of people. I hear that a lot. Sometimes clients will compare themselves to this other person that is able to open up, and it's somehow super easy. I think it gets easier with practice. The more we do that, the easier it becomes. But I think that experience is very universal, that it's uncomfortable and just generally scary to open up.
And I think going along with what Courtney said, we as therapists recognize the privilege that we have of hearing people's, deepest, darkest secrets, and it's never lost on me that it's a choice for them to be there, it's a choice for them to share with us, and we are lucky enough to be receiving that information.
When I have new clients come for even their initial evaluation, it seems like, I mean, it is just an unloading of so many details of their life, of their journey, and it's sometimes not even able to be done in a one session. Sometimes it carries over into the next, but I always, particularly with those in initial sessions, thank that person for sharing and going through all that information, because I know it can kind of be one, exhausting, two, maybe something they've, and even sometimes they'll point out, I've never really told somebody that before. And I feel like it is an honor to be on the receiving end and be able to be the person that's the trusted one to help them and support them. And they are choosing, like Jackie said, to share that with you and to allow you to be part of their journey. So it really is a privilege for us to be on that end where people are entrusting us.
Thank you for tuning in. Next week, we will be ending our video series and answering the final questions. If you like the video, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. We'll see you guys next week.